Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Captain.
I'm Lynn.
And today we're going to be reviewing an expansion to the game Thingvellir. I'm going to put a link right above us here to our review and tutorial we already did for Thingvellir. If you're not familiar with Thingvellir, before watching this, head over there and watch the review and tutorial. Quick spoiler alert here. We loved Thingvellir. Thingvellir is a really good game. We both really enjoyed it quite a bit. But the company also gave us a expansion to check out, and that is Thingvellir, and that's what this is going to be. This is going to be a review. That's a big thank you to Hachette Board Games and Grrr Games for this review copy of Thingvellir, the first expansion to Thingvellir. So again, if you hadn't seen it and are already familiar with it, we loved Thingvellir, so we're coming at this from a very positive standpoint towards the game. But maybe this isn't going to be super positive on the expansion. What do you think? Should we just start by going over what's in the box?
Yeah.
All right, why don't you open it up? What do we got? What comes in the box when you buy the expansion Thingvellir?
Well, there's a little rule book.
Okay, so the rulebook I'm quite positive on, just like the rulebook of the basic game. This is very well done. Lots of color illustrations to help you understand everything. No issues with the rulebook. I read through it and I was immediately ready to teach other people the expansion.
Some tokens.
These are tokens because there are quite a few cards in here where when you first draft them, you don't know what, whether they are a miner or a warrior or an explorer. And these are tokens to mark them as such because if they're the first of that class that you draft, you will need to let everybody know and remind yourself what you declared they were. Then next we have a bunch of cards here. Now there are level 1 and level 2
camp cards. The camp is another area.
Now the camp is one of them. It's really the main new mechanic to the game. And then in addition we have we have some new hero cards here. A bunch of new heroes. Was it six new heroes?
I think so.
6 new heroes, and then also some cheat sheets for the cards for the camp. Now, the cards in the camp are broken down into mercenaries, and is it artifacts?
Artifacts, yeah.
Mercenaries and artifacts. So either you get cool items, or the mercenaries are new types of people. I actually quite like the mercenaries, and this is why you need the little markers, because the mercenaries usually can be 2 different classes. You decide which one they are when you recruit them. There's quite a few of those. Plus, there's also these really cool artifacts which do interesting extra things as well.
And there's a new score sheet that has an extra line for the camp.
So, all right, now all of this individually is actually, I would say, good. Like each individual thing you look at and you're like, okay, this is interesting. Okay, that's interesting. But when you actually put it into practice, I'm not sure how good it is in regard to adding to Thingvellir.
I feel that it overcomplicates an already pretty perfect game.
Yeah, so when we were playing Thingvellir, I was like, this game is a near perfect game. What would you add to it? I can't wait to check out the expansion. I can't imagine what they would add to it, but I have to trust them because they did such an amazing job on the game. And then we played it with the expansion, and we were like, I don't think we would play it with the expansion anymore. Like I feel like our initial opinion of it being a near perfect game holds, and it didn't really need anything else.
Yeah, I feel like the expansion detracts from the enjoyment of playing it.
Okay, so here's what the expansion gives you. So you get this new area called a camp, which you mark in the same kind of general column that you do with the taverns in the base game. You get the camp before the taverns. And at the start of each turn, before the dwarves enter the taverns, you reveal new camp cards, so that you have a total of 5 cards in the camp. And again, those new camp cards are mixes of mercenaries and artifacts, which is kind of cool. And then the Elveland, which of course is what they call the players in the game, with the highest bid can choose to take a card from the camp instead of from the tavern. Now, generally speaking, that's most of what's newly added. So you got these 5 extra cards, and it's an extra reason to really want to be the highest bid. Because if you're the highest bid, instead of a choice of a few cards in the tavern, you have a choice of more than twice as many cards because you have a bunch of cards in the camp. Nobody else gets to pick cards from the camp. There is an artifact that lets you pick cards from the camp. One of our games we played of it. Someone had gotten this artifact that said you can pick cards from the camp even if you're not the highest bid, as long as the highest bid didn't take it.
Yeah.
That was right? Mm-hmm. And that was kind of an interesting thing if you were really going for the cards from the camp. I thought the mercenary cards were really cool, but the extra rules for a lot of the artifacts, you need a cheat sheet just for the artifacts. There's so many of them, and it adds a lot of complexity with the artifacts. I think like if they just added the mercenaries, like into the regular deck, that and maybe some more heroes, that would have been okay. It's the adding of the extra area that has uber specific rules on how it works, the adding of the extra artifacts that have a lot of extra complicated rules, along with the adding of 6 new heroes who are just as complicated as some of the more complicated previous heroes, which adds a lot of more complexity. It gets to be a bit much to keep track of, especially like I would, even if I liked this game enough to want to play with it all the time, I would still never play with it with new players to Nidavellir because I feel like it would overwhelm them.
Yeah.
Because, do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, Nidavellir is pretty streamlined, and this kind of undoes the streamlinedness of it.
Is that a word now?
It is.
The streamlinedness?
Yes.
I like that. I agree. So it's not that any of the particular components in this are bad. Like, the idea of having an extra incentive to be highest bid and therefore give you more options, it's not bad. The mercenaries, probably my favorite part of this expansion. They're kind of cool. I like them. I like the mercenaries. The artifacts give you another thing other than just dwarves or the treasure cards that let you upgrade coins. Mm-hmm. A cool idea. It's a larger variety of heroes. A cool idea. It's just adding all of this together at once makes the game overly bogged down with. There's now like a ton of, okay, what does that do again? Okay, yeah. Let me go through all the heroes again, and there's now 6 more heroes. Which already the first couple times you play the game, people go through the heroes a lot because they're like, okay, what do we got? Do I want to take any of these now, or do I just want to, mm-hmm. which hero am I going to take? So yeah, I agree. It definitely, I mean, it's not that these are bad. It's that
it's too much.
It's too much.
It makes it overwhelming.
Yeah, they should have kind of, I feel like they should have probably restricted themselves to just a couple of things. I feel like they had a bunch of interesting ideas, and they're like, all these could be cool. Let's throw them all in, and it was, like let me ask you.
And I also feel like it should have been like there shouldn't have been an extra area. Like it should have been like, I know that they have a certain number of cards because when you run out, that's the end of that era or whatever mm-hmm. they call it. But, like, you could extend it by a round or two. Yeah. You can add, like, 3 extra mercenaries in 1 and 3 extra in 2. And, right. You could, but not have, like, an entire separate area for them. I think that was...
Out of curiosity, because you were saying about adding in the mercenaries, do you agree that the mercenaries are probably the most fun of the new cards, the new things?
Yeah, well, I mean... It could be a combination because, like you said, they have those cards where you don't actually get anyone. You just, like, get to upgrade your stuff. Yeah. Like, they could have added in, like, 3 artifacts that just come up like that. Right. Instead of having to go to a separate area.
I feel like I'm agreeing with you that if they had added in the mercenaries and a few artifacts that you added into each of the decks so that...
It would just make each round a little longer.
Each era a little longer.
Era I don't know.
Is it era? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
You know what we're talking about if you played the game. It would have made it a little longer. I think that would have been fine if they just added in a few mercenaries, a few new heroes, and that wouldn't have been that complicated.
Because they didn't do that, you still have the same number of rounds, and now there's even more things to try and get, and it just feels like it was like taking away, spreading out your interests. Interest is not the right word. Spreading out your ability to get, I don't know.
It's detracting because it's too much. It's just too many things for you to concentrate
Well,
on.
because like already like you need to concentrate on like one or two things.
Yeah.
Like you can't do everything. And then they add this whole other section that like thins your concentration even more.
Dilutes.
Dilutes, yes.
I think, is that the word you're looking for? Dilutes.
I don't know.
And now, okay. Yeah, so I don't want to be too overly harsh because there are some cool ideas here and people might disagree with us. I could see people being like, "Oh, what are you talking about? This is crazy cool. I love all the extra complexity they added into this." It's just that I mean, so here's the thing. We're talking about a bidding drafting game. Where you have coins that you upgrade the value of. You set collect dwarves of different factions. This is not something that's supposed to be an uber heavy game. Don't get me wrong, I love uber heavy games. But like when someone does a war strategy game and it's kind of light and they add an expansion that adds a whole bunch more complexity to it, you're like, yes, please, more war strategy, love it, want more complexity. But when someone does a bidding drafting game, which is meant to be not a super heavy game, those are not generally super heavy, and then they add a bunch of complexity to it, you're like, this is now heavier than it should be for the style of game it is.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's just this style of game I don't feel like could support the weight that this adds onto it. It feels like the foundation is not strong enough. It's going to collapse under the weight.
Mm-hmm.
That said, there were some cool ideas here. I just feel like they did too much. Maybe it was overly ambitious. They tried to do too much in one tiny little box expansion. This is a small box expansion. I mean, they could have gotten away, and I think it would have been better with, like we were saying it, where you just added some new cards in.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have to add in a whole new series of mechanics for a new area. Didn't have to add in as many artifacts as they did. Just, a few artifacts, a few mercenaries, and a couple extra heroes, and it probably would have been better than it is. It's just a bit overly ambitious. Now that said, I'm not negative on this game. I'm not going to give it a negative score. It's just disappointing to me because this is an expansion that I was looking forward to trying because of how much I liked the regular game. Would you agree with that? Are you negative on this?
Oh, I would never play with this again.
Well, I'm never going to play with it again either. No. But I feel like I'm meh. I'm in the middle with a little bit of a spoiler there for where my rating's going to be. I'm kind of meh. I'm in the middle where, but because how much lower that is than the amazing score we gave the base game, yeah, I would never play with this again. I think it brings it down. But the thing is, I don't hate it. There's nothing in here where I'm like, this is bad. Instead, it's like, this is too much. So I'm not negative on it. I'm just kind of meh, and I would pass over it.
I don't think individually the ideas are bad. I just think they implemented them in
you're with me.
the wrong way.
You're kind of middle of the road. Also, you're mad. You're like, it brings it down. I would never play with it again.
Yeah.
But you don't like hate it. Like it doesn't fill you with a burning hatred.
No.
Okay. Well, that's important because we're sounding very negative on this, and I do want to say we're not saying it's bad. We're just saying it's nowhere near as good as the base game. But that's also still a recommendation not to buy. But I do want to specify that because this is sounding pretty negative. All right. That said, I still recommend Nidavellir. I think Nidavellir is great. I highly recommend you check out Nidavellir if you haven't. Even if you don't normally like bidding games, because Lynn is not normally a fan of bidding games, but this is one of the few bidding games that you quite like, is Nidavellir.
Because everyone wins something. Like the person who bids the highest gets to choose first, but everyone who bids gets something.
All right, Lynn, do you want to go first or second on your rating on this one?
I don't know. I'll go first. I seem to always go first.
Well, it's always by your choice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've already said we're obviously not going to be giving this super high ratings, but Lynn, how many stars out of 10 do you give to Thingvellir, the expansion to Nidavellir?
Probably a 4.
Okay, so that's kind of bad.
Well, because I think it's unnecessary.
It's on the lighter end of bad. Like you're not like hating on it, but you're like, eh.
No, it was an unnecessary expansion.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a 5. Again, and the reason I'm going with a 5, 5 is a little higher than Lynn's 4. I also agree with Lynn. It's just I'm not being quite as harsh on it because, again, individually, I don't think there's anything wrong with this. I just think that maybe they were a little overambitious. Maybe they only play tested it with the same people who had play tested Nidavellir and already knew the game inside and out, and adding this ton of stuff was like no big deal to them. They didn't realize they should probably play test it with people who've only played Nidavellir a few times and really liked it to see, hey, so now that you've played it 3 or 4 times, would you be okay with adding all this stuff on? Maybe might have been a good decision in the development process, which is it. Now I have no evidence one way or another, but it feels like they didn't do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, because that's the thing is a lot of times if people keep their same playtest groups and they playtest a game dozens of times before it gets released, which you should do. The problem is when you're doing an expansion with that group, they know the game so inside and out that it is nothing to them to add in these ton of things. And I think that might be what happened here. Because they might have all been like, oh yeah, it's not too much. It's not too much to add this in. This is fine. But they all played this game like 50 times before it was even released.
Probably have all the heroes memorized.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Now, if on the other hand, if you have played Nidavellir a ludicrous amount of times and have every hero memorized and want more complexity, maybe this might be the expansion for you. If you're in that category, like, you know, the designer's own playtest group, that might actually be all right for you. But otherwise, for, you know, if you're not, if this is not the only game you've been playing for months, this probably is a bit too much. I'm just saying it came across that way for Lynn and I, and we play a lot of games. We are not new to gaming at all. We did play it with someone who is not as heavy a gamer as us, and they were way overwhelmed. They had already played Nidavellir by itself, and they were ludicrously overwhelmed by the amount of extra stuff in here. But even us, we were like, this is too much.
Yeah.
Like, I was trying really hard to like it because of how much I love Nidavellir, and it was too much. All right, well, there you have it. That is our review for Thingvellir, the expansion for Nidavellir. If you enjoyed this review for a board game expansion and would like to see us do more like it, be sure to give it a like. Share it on all forms of social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.